Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to Salt Talk with Jermine Alberty in part one of the special Make a Difference Day 2025 edition. We honored the legacy of our beloved mentor, Rosemary Davis Kelly, a woman whose spirit of service and unwavering compassion continue to inspire us all to lead with humility, love, and purpose. And now you're tuning in to part two, where we will continue that conversation with my dear friend, Dr. Bryan Williams from Houston, Texas, a dynamic leader, educator, and motivator who embodies the very essence of the SALT model. This is Jermine Alberty, and you're listening to the SALT Talk. So welcome back to segment two of the SALT model in action. So, Bryan, as you know, one of the ways I try to make a difference is through what I call the SALT model, which is service, affirmation, love, and transformation. And it's simple yet deeply transformative. As a framework, what it does is it challenges us to serve with humility, recognizing that true leadership begins with compassion, and then to affirm the worth and dignity of others by reminding people that they are seen and valued. For me, love is always something that includes both courage and healthy boundaries, ensuring that our compassion does not deplete us, but sustain us to pursue transformation, and not just in the world around us, but within ourselves. And so I like to talk about how the SALT model should remind us that healing and change starts when we show up fully and live authentically, and allow grace to flow through our service. And so service is the heartbeat of Make a Difference Day. It's the rhythm of kindness that moves us to volunteer at a shelter, lend a hand to a neighbor, or simply check in on a friend who's struggling. And so, just like Ms. Kelly said, that it's not about being a role model, but a role motor. So you can talk about love all day long, but service is love in motion. It's that visual expression of compassion and community. And I want to make sure, one, that people kind of get an ideal of who you are, first of all, before we just jump into questions. They know you're my friend. That's great to know. But tell me a little bit about what you would like folks to know about who is Bryan Williams.
Bryan is a native of Kansas City, Missouri. I currently live in Houston, Texas. I'm the sixth of nine children to Linda Williams. And as I mentioned previously, my mom was a single parent. I am an uncle. I'm a brother. I'm a son. Professionally, I'm an educator. And so I've been in public education for 27 years. I've been a teacher, assistant principal, and now I serve as an assistant superintendent, supporting and coaching and supervising middle and high school principals. And so that's just a little bit about me. Well, I'll talk to you about professionally, but I'm also, an avid swimmer, avid runner. I enjoy riding my motorcycle, and my passion is kayaking. So a little bit about me.
So what's amazing is how service followed us throughout our careers. You and I worked together as youth coordinators for the Housing Authority of Kansas, Missouri. And then we went on to continue in just to fill a service. And so it's like it was embedded in us as the youth to serve and never left our DNA. And so the first question I have for you around service is, how do you see service showing up in your life now as that educator and leader?
Well, one of the ways it shows up as an educator and leader is one of my leadership styles is servant leadership. And so I make it a point every day I go to work. I think through the lens of how can I make a difference? How can I be a blessing? How can I serve the students, families, and educators that I work with in a way that makes their job a little easier, more effective? How can I remove obstacles and barriers out of their way so that they can provide a great education and experience for students? There was a former superintendent who I attended several of his leadership workshops, and his name escapes me. I will remember it. But one of the things that he used to do is carry a small spoon
Mm.
in his pocket. And as he served as superintendent of a particular school district in Houston, he would go to schools or campuses and pull out the spoon and say, "I'm here to serve." And I
Mm.
remember when I first became a principal, one of the teachers who worked for him, his name is Dr. Gordon Anderson. When I first became a principal, one of the teachers that I used to work with who worked for him in the school district said I reminded her of him so much that she wanted to gift me a silver spoon, which I have
Mm.
to this day. And she said, just remember that as you become principal of your school, never forget that you're there to serve because you remind me so much of Dr. Anderson.
Mm.
And so I
Mm.
remember my first day at the school where students and families came. I pulled out the spoon and introduced myself, and I said, "This spoon represents how I'm going to lead and how I'm going to serve you. And I'm here to serve, and I'm here to help, and I'm here to support." So that's how that shows up.
Wow, wow. And one of the things I think that is so important to me is this, and that is we often, when we encounter those who serve in the military, we often say, "Thank you for your service."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that should be true for educators. We ought to thank educators for their service because they give so much day in, day out. And sometimes I believe educators are some of the most underappreciated people who serve in our country. And finding that balance, of being there for the students and for the parents and for the community. One question I want to ask you is how do you balance that call to serve others with the need to take care of yourself? You said you kayak, you say you run, but what else do you do, and would you encourage other educators to do to take care of themselves?
I am all about mindfulness
Hmm.
and balance, work-life balance,
Hmm.
and filling your cup
Yes.
so that you can be refreshed and full to serve others. And I partner with another organization to do principal leadership development, and we often talk about resiliency and mindfulness and how it's important to care for yourself. And I remind our educators that, for those who've flown in an airplane uh, before the flight takes off, flight attendants will always make the announcement in the event of an emergency and the cabin loses pressure, an
Yeah.
oxygen mask will drop down.
Yeah.
If you're with a small child or caring for someone, please make sure to put on your oxygen mask
Yes.
first before you try to assist somebody else. And so I try to use that analogy or that example to remind them that you have to take care of self or you
Yeah.
won't be of any good or value to try to take care of others. So what I try to do is number one, I try to treat people the way I want to be treated. I respect people's time away from work and
Yeah.
on the weekend. And so I know some people like to send emails. Some people like to just create stress when people are not at work, but I
Hmm.
respect boundaries.
Yeah.
And I like for people to respect my boundaries.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to give 110% while I'm at work. And, there are instances where I do have to work outside of work.
Hmm.
That's a personal choice,
Yeah.
but I'm not going to infringe that upon anybody else. So that's the first thing, just respecting boundaries and parameters and understanding that when I'm at work, we're going to work. But when I'm away from work, people are entitled to enjoy their free time and their family. And then, secondly, I talked about taking care of self. And so finding joy in those hobbies and activities that I
Yeah.
love doing. I mentioned swimming, and I swim every day. I make it an effort after I leave work.
Yes.
I go swimming. And though you know me very well, so sometimes you may call and
Yeah.
I'll call you back to say I was swimming.
Yeah.
And then I wake up in the morning and run. And then at least twice a month, I make it a goal to go on a kayaking trip with a couple kayaking groups I'm a part of. I try to have a little bit of wind therapy by riding a motorcycle, but I just try to do the things that I enjoy doing because those fill my cup. They re-energize me, they help build resilience, and they refresh me.
And I know folks listening may be kind of wondering, like, He's talking about self-care and so forth. And wasn't this episode dedicated to Make a Difference Day? It is. And the reason why we're having this conversation is because so many times people who serve others don't take time to take care of themselves. And so I want to remind individuals that genuine service also requires balance. And if you notice your energy is fading and your patience is thinning or your heart is growing numb, that may be what is called a sign of compassion fatigue. And I want to make sure that it's really clear that that's not a symptom of weakness, but really it's a signal of faithfulness that needs renewal. So even those who are called to serve, we have to pause, we have to rest, we have to refill because helping hands can only heal when they're whole. And so I think it's so important that we talk about service, that we really are make watching out for that compassion fatigue and that we find that balance. So you all know the SALT model. Service is the S, the A is affirmation. And so affirmation is that act of speaking life to others and to yourself. And when we say, I see you and you matter, we create a ripple of healing because affirmation also breaks stigma and it reminds those living with mental health challenges and substance use challenges that they are defined not by their diagnosis, but by dignity. And so it's really important that we affirm people, no matter what their situation may be in this life, disability, but let them know care about them. And what role has affirmation played, not only in your work, but also in your personal life?
I just remember growing up, the role that affirmation played in my life. I had lots of positive role models, mentors. You and I just talked about Miss Kelly and the power of her life and work in our lives. But there were lots of just amazing people who spoke life and blessing and saw potential in me, and they brought those things out of me by speaking to the potential that I had and the gifts and talents that I had. And I remember in college, I had a professor. I didn't think I was a good writer. Her name was Dr. Blanche Slosslin, and she was my literacy and education teacher. And as an education major, I was an elementary education major. I had to take many literature and literacy classes because I was going to be teaching reading uh, as an elementary teacher. And I remember I wrote this paper, didn't think I was a good writer, but she passed the paper back and I got an A on the paper. And she said to me, I'll still never forget how she said it and what she said. She said, Bryan, you did an excellent job on your paper and you have a gift for writing. And nobody had ever told me that.
Mm.
And so that was just an example of her affirming a gift that I didn't know I had. And that actually empowered me to write more. And because I earned an A on that paper, that empowered and motivated me to continue earning A's on assignments. And that motivated me to continue earning A's all throughout the rest of my college history because I was an average student, made above average grades, but I didn't really apply myself because I did enough to get by, and I still made great grades. But when I encountered and entered college, I had to really work hard, so I had to really earn those grades.
Yeah.
But as a recipient of people speaking life and affirmation and blessing over me, I try to extend that to others. I try to
Yeah.
extend that to students and parents and teachers and leaders that I serve. And here's the hard part of my job
Mm.
as a principal supervisor. Uh, my job is to give feedback,
Yeah.
and there is adjusting or constructive feedback where there's something that has to change, and then there's positive feedback. And in the nature of my role is I have to give lots of feedback, and sometimes the feedback is very constructive and critical. And whenever I make that feedback, that's a withdrawal. So
Hmm.
because of the nature of my role, I always try to look and be intentional about
Mm-hmm.
making deposits, which are words of affirmation, because I know eventually I'm going to have to make some withdrawals.
Mm-hmm.
And the withdrawals are not anything that tries to damage or discredit somebody, but it's more meant to coach them up and to grow them. Um, and that's my role and responsibility. So how the affirmation plays out in the workplace, I just really try to be intentional and understand that words have power.
Yeah.
They can either build others up or tear others down. And I try to be careful with my words and how I use my words, but I also am intentional about ensuring that I speak uh, blessing words that provide healing, that provide life, and that make deposits into the lives of people.
Yeah. One of the things I know that I truly gleaned from my mentors and those adults in my life, and research tells us that, having a caring adult in the life of a young person can be one of the greatest protective factors that can alleviate some of those risk factors that they encounter. And one of the things as adults that we can do for young people is just let them know that they're loved. And so L in the SALT model is love. And so what we know is love is more than just an emotion, but love is actually an act. And so love is compassion in motion. And so it's not only what you do, but how you do it. And doing it with patience and grace and understanding is so important. And then love shows up when we are able to step back and let when others step back. And love also knows when to pause. And so when we care for our own mind and soul, then we are modeling what I would consider healthy love for those that we help. Uh, I'm a national trainer for a program called Mental Health First Aid. And in Mental Health First Aid, we say that self care is not selfish. And what it really truly is stewardship. And being men, one question that I would be curious to hear your answer is how do men, in particular, show love without feeling weak or vulnerable?
Well, I don't profess to know the answer to that. 'Cause I'm
Yeah.
still learning how to show love. I'll answer it in this way. Growing up in a family of 9 with a single mom, my mom was not very affectionate,
Mm,
and I love you was not a phrase that we often heard.
mm,
We understood we were loved, and my mom provided for us to demonstrate her love to us, and she sent us to really great schools, provided a private education for us, and you know she did her part in fulfilling her responsibility as a mom, but we didn't I didn't grow up in a very affectionate family. So this is an area where I'm still learning about. But as a man, how do I show love? Number one, I, you know, I, I try to, I, I'm a man of faith, as you know, and so I try to put my faith into practice. And I remember a conversation that an individual had with Christ about, what was the greatest commandment, and Jesus's response was, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and then love your neighbor as yourself. So as I think about those two commandments, I try to live out my faith by loving my creator, but then also loving my fellow neighbor in a way where I'm accepting of my neighbor. I try to demonstrate acts of kindness and grace towards my neighbor. As a recipient of unconditional love, grace, and forgiveness, I try to extend that unconditional love, grace, and forgiveness. Um, I also try to show love by being someone who's dependable and reliable. If I commit to doing something or say I'm going to do something, I do my best to try to honor my word. And then I'm reading this book called 1 Month to Live. You actually should be reading it with me because
Yes. Yes.
you purchased it. And
Absolutely.
I'm on day 22. And in today's chapter, it really talked about being honest and truthful with people.
Yeah.
And that if we really loved people the way we say we do, we would be honest with them and not try. And the chapter dealt with just being a person of integrity and not lying, but just being truthful and honest with people and upfront. And the author of that book, the authors of that book, Chris and Carrie Shook, wrote that several years ago, but I just picked it up. But it's ironic that you asked this question about love, and that was one of the highlights from the chapter today I read. Just being truthful and honest, and in your truthfulness and honesty, doing that in a loving, gracious way, where you're trying to help somebody
Yeah.
and not tear people down. So I think that's how I try to live out and allow love to manifest itself as a man in my life.
Well,
Haven't completely figured it out, but
well, yeah, and I
that's
tell you, I asked that question only because as men, you and I do this a lot for one another. And that is one, we are able to trust each other with our emotions.
yep,
And so I don't feel my vulnerability in sharing what's going on in my life to you as exposure, but really that I can trust you.
yeah,
So when a man allows someone to see their heart, their fears, their hopes, their gratitudes, then that invites respect and even a sense of intimacy. Because vulnerability is not weakness, it's really courage.
yep,
And so I think being able to um, truly draw on our faith, we know that love aligns with divine strength. The scripture tells us that love is patient, love is kind, love is enduring. None of those things are weaknesses. And we both believe that basically love reflects God's image within us. So I think that the way we can share with men, hey, don't feel weak, don't feel vulnerable, is understand, just embody confidence and embody compassion to know that when we're able to open up to other young men and let them know, hey man, I've been there. I've been there, and you're not alone in this. That vulnerability is a way of showing love to them to say, we're going to save you from having to go through that headache if you're willing to listen to what we have to share with you. And that's when transformation happens. That final T is transformation because transformation happens when service, affirmation, and love work together. It's when we as a community move from reaction to resilience. And I think it's so important that we point out that transformation isn't instant, it's intentional, and it begins in each of us. So uh, I want to ask you a personal question, and that is, how has our friendship over the years sharpened or transformed you?
well, when I think of that sharpen as iron sharpens iron, that's a verse in the Bible. So a man
Hmm.
sharpens another man. And so when I think about our friendship, you and I, have had a great friendship for, I'll probably say it goes above great, but phenomenal
Hmm.
friendship for over 25, probably, is it 30 years?
Yeah, yeah. At least
Oh, it's
30.
probably past 30 years.
Probably
Yeah.
30. Yeah, so I'll just say more than 30.
More than 30 plus years. And we've been able to spar with one another. We don't
Yeah,
always agree.
yeah, right.
We don't, sometimes we talk several times a week, sometimes weeks pass,
Yeah,
but we're able to pick up where we left off. Um, there are times where I'm in need and you're able to help out, or you're in need and I'm able to help out.
yeah,
We don't judge one another. You talked about sharing emotions. We're able to share emotions and our hearts with one another. And in the book I just mentioned about 1 month to live, Um, the author said, you know who your friends are when you are going through a difficult time, such as the death of a loved one or an illness or
Yeah.
sickness. And then you look around and see who's near you, who's
Mm.
standing by.
Yeah.
That's a sign of your true friends in those dark moments. And you've been there through some dark moments in my life. And so, I think we try to reciprocate the friendship,
Yeah.
and you probably do it more often than I do. You definitely reach out and make a lot more deposits, and I appreciate that. That motivates me to try to step up and do it even more. So I think uh, to if I can sum up the transformation of the friendship, I think you and I have developed accountability to one another, where you can call me out on some things and I can call
Yeah.
you out on some things, and we can hold each other accountable. And we have maintained that 30 plus friendship uh, for, I mean, forever. And we have not allowed anything to get in the way of that friendship or to hinder it. Not distance. You live in Vegas. I
Yeah.
live in Houston.
Yeah.
When I moved to Houston, you had moved away to St. Louis and then Columbia. So distance hasn't been
Yeah.
anything that has taken away from our friendship. Um, Life circumstances hasn't been an impediment to our friendship. I don't think we've let anything get in the way of our friendship. So,
My friends, we go into segment 3 of this podcast. Is really dedicated to caring for self and cultivating connection. And I'm so happy that we became friends so many years ago, 30 plus years. We've helped each other along the way, as you said. We shared things that the only two of us ever will know. And
yeah,
and we've been helpers to one another, as you said. And, I think it's so important to talk about the human side of helping and the inner life of the helper, because service connects us. But research shows we thrive not just on acts of service, but on relationships that sustain us. And there's no perfect number of friends. And social science research reminds us that the layers of friendship play a critical role in our mental health. And so evolutionary psychologist Robin Dunbar proposed what's known as the Dunbar number. And the ideal is that humans can maintain about 150 stable relationships. And inside that circle are smaller rings. So 5 people basically are your support clique. Those are the intimate ties who receive about 40% of your emotional energy. And I would say you are one of my 5 people for sure. And then 15 people are your good friends and those who you can count on in a crisis. I don't think I have 15 people I can count on in a crisis. I think I
oh no,
have
me either. Mm-mm.
and then 50 people are your general friends, which are have meaningful but lighter ties. And then uh, Dunbar says that 150 people is that broader community of people that you know well enough to greet and engage authentically. And so, on social media, of course, this has expanded. People have, thousands of people who, become friends on Facebook somewhere, so forth. But research tells us, a few research studies said that most US adults have 1 to 4 close friends, and having just 3 to 5 close friends strongly correlate with better mental health and less loneliness. And so I think it's so important that as we talk about make a difference day, that we really point out the importance of connection, because sometimes people are just doers and don't take care of themselves. And so when we are serving and building community, we need to check in on each other. And we do that often. As you said, sometimes it be a few weeks when we check back in, but healthy friendships protect us from isolation. It sustains our resilience and it reduces compassion fatigue. So I just think it's so important that we have those core relationships that we can use to recharge our emotional battery. And I'm grateful that you're part of that inner circle. And so as we wrap up, I really want to make sure that I just do things that I want to encourage people to do. And that is, one, set those healthy boundaries. So it's okay to say no. So your yes stays meaningful. We want to rest on purpose, which means we schedule recovery as intentionally as service. We want to stay connected, so find community with other helpers that support, keep us grounded. And then lastly, we want to reflect and we want to release. And take 5 minutes after a day of service to pray, to journal, or to breathe. So, my friend, I have one final question I want to ask you because I know in the field of education, administrators and teachers and other staff members, burnout is really something that can happen a lot. And also, not only burnout, but then experiencing secondary trauma. And so, compassion fatigue is both when one experiences both burnout and secondary trauma. And what happens is it impacts their compassion toward the work that they do. So, what advice would you give to leaders, to students, teachers who are at that point where they're just kind of burned out? And what kind of advice would you give that person?
Well, when I think about that, a couple things come to mind. Number one, I think the ability, and you mentioned this, to press pause. And I think
Mm,
it's okay to press pause and get away for, a period of time where you can be refreshed and renewed and restored in whatever form that is for you. For me, um, we mentioned swimming, my water therapy,
mhm.
kayaking, the wind therapy, riding my motorcycle, jogging, finding something that I enjoy doing that allows me to fill my cup and the ability to press pause to do that. Secondly, sometimes thinking about, I know this segment is all about, or the theme of today's podcast is about service.
Mhm.
Sometimes just looking for ways and opportunities to be a blessing or to meet the need of somebody else. And as you're meeting that need of somebody else, it will remind you of how blessed you truly are and how blessed I'm truly am. And um, hopefully that would rekindle and develop a spirit of gratitude that we do have a lot to be grateful for.
Yeah.
And sometimes we consume ourselves with what we don't have, or we make comparisons with others um, in regards to what they have that we don't, but really just being grateful for what we do have. And I think, I guess that would be my advice. Look for ways to express gratitude for what you do have, and then finding a way to meet the need of somebody else, because then it will remind you of, you know, all the blessings and all the things that you have that others may not have. So those would be my two pieces of advice.
Man, thanks for sharing that. And I want to encourage everybody just to learn how to breathe. Inhale deeply sometimes and then learn to just exhale. So just inhale and exhale. And then say to yourself this when you feel yourself that point where you just want to throw in the towel. I can serve with compassion without losing myself in the process. I can serve with compassion without losing myself in the process. Because you can't be the difference for others if you're disconnected from yourself. So as we close, I'm reminded of that teenage boy in the Octagon Club, the one who just wanted to help people, and how those small acts of service shaped a lifetime of purpose. And 30 years later, two grown men, that spirit continues to grow, not just in me, but in those who stood beside me. And so, my brother, Dr. Bryan Williams, is a living reminder that iron truly sharpens iron, and that real brotherhood is something that you can obtain and maintain. And so, our brotherhood is a ministry all of its own. And so I would like to just offer a final word that with regards to Make a Difference Day, and that is I want to invite you to be salt. What does that mean? I want to invite you to serve with humility. I want to invite you to affirm others and yourself. I want you to love deeply but wisely. And I want to transform your community through consistency and care. And before I wrap up, Brian, you want to say one last thing that could maybe inspire others?
I'm going to say two last things, and I'm glad
Two.
you've given me
Go
this
for it.
opportunity.
Go for it.
So,
Yes.
because your theme is service,
Mm-hmm.
two of my favorite quotes, one from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., where he states, everybody can be great because everybody can serve.
Yes.
And then Marion Wright Edelman was often quoted with saying, service is the rent that we pay for living on earth.
My goodness. My goodness. Well, listen, as you go, remember helping hands must also be healing hands. And if you start to feel weary, pause and refill, because compassion fatigue isn't a sign to quit. It's an invitation to rest and renew. I'm Jermine Alberty, and this has been the Salt Talk, where we season life with service, affirmation, love, and transformation. And until next time, keep making a difference and keep being the difference.